What would you do if you found out the person you were about to marry never loved you? Not even for a single day. What if the only thing they ever cared about was your money, your mansion, your name? Now imagine lying in your own bed, bandages wrapped around your head, pretending to be unconscious, and hearing your fiancé say the most heartless words you've ever heard in your life. That's exactly what happened to Henry Mitchell. And trust me, what he discovered that day didn't just break his heart. It changed his entire life forever. But before I tell you what Julia said, the words that destroyed everything, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment telling me, would you ever test someone you love like this? Go ahead, comment right now, because this story is going to keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last word. Henry lay in bed with his head wrapped in thick white bandages. His ribs ached from the tight wrappings he had placed on himself earlier that morning. But the physical pain meant nothing compared to what he was about to hear. He kept his eyes half closed, barely breathing, pretending to be unconscious, while the woman he had loved for 2 years stood just a few feet away, showing her true face for the very first time. Lucy, the housekeeper, stood near the bed in her blue uniform, holding Henry's newborn twin boys carefully in her arms. The babies were wrapped in soft white blankets, peaceful and quiet. Every now and then, one of them would let out a tiny whimper, and Lucy would gently rock them until they settled again. The bedroom was large and elegant, dark wood furniture, cream-colored walls, soft sunlight pouring through tall windows. It looked like a place of peace. But there was no peace in that room. Not today. Get these kids out of here right now, Lucy, Julia snapped, waving her hand toward the babies like she was shooing away an animal. I can't stand this crying anymore. They should be somewhere else. A nursery, a nanny's room, anywhere. Just not in front of me. I don't have the patience for this. Lucy flinched. She held the twins a little tighter against her chest and looked at Julia with wide, frightened eyes. She had only been working in this house for 2 months, hired right after the twins were born. But from the very first day, she had fallen in love with those babies. She would pause during her cleaning just to look at them, to check if they were warm enough, if they had eaten, if they were sleeping well. Lucy came from a hard life. She worked to support her sick mother who needed expensive heart medication every month, and her 2 younger brothers who were still in high school. This job was everything to her. Henry paid fairly, treated her with respect, something she had rarely experienced before. But now, watching Julia's face twist with irritation, Lucy felt a cold fear rising in her chest. Lucy knew she had no power in this house. She was just the housekeeper, the woman who mopped the floors, cleaned the bathrooms, and washed the dishes. But something inside her refused to stay silent. Those babies were only 3 weeks old. They hadn't asked to be born into this mess. They hadn't asked for any of this. But ma'am, they're newborns, Lucy said softly, her voice trembling as she chose every word carefully. They need to be close to their father. The doctor said having family nearby helps with recovery. And they're so quiet right now. I promise I'll keep them silent. You won't even know they're here. Julia let out a short, cold laugh. She crossed her arms over her chest and tilted her head, looking at Lucy the way someone looks at something beneath them. Julia was dressed in an expensive white silk blouse with pearl buttons and a perfectly tailored beige skirt, clothes Henry had bought for her on a trip to Paris the year before. She always loved showing off. Designer bags, luxury dinners, first-class flights. Julia made sure everyone knew she was with a wealthy man. Her Instagram was filled with photos of vacations, jewelry, 5-star restaurants. Everything was for display. But what Henry never saw, what he was only now beginning to understand as he lay in that bed, was that Julia never once asked about his dreams. She never wanted to hear about his childhood, how he grew up dirt poor in a small town in Ohio, how his mother worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, how he started his first business out of a garage with borrowed money and no safety net. She never asked about the sleepless nights, the failures, the moments he almost gave up. All she ever cared about was the end result, the mansion, the cars, the bank accounts. And now, lying there pretending to be broken, Henry was finally seeing the truth. Recovery, Julia scoffed, turning her face away in disgust. You really think he's going to recover? Look at him, Lucy. He can barely breathe. He looks like a mummy. The doctors told me his chances are almost zero. He could be in a vegetative state for the rest of his life. And I am not going to spend my years taking care of a vegetable and 2 babies that aren't even mine. Henry's heart slammed against his ribs. But he didn't move. He couldn't. Not yet. Those twins, his sons, were the result of a previous relationship with a woman named Beatrice. She was a music teacher, kind and warm, someone he had met at a charity gala 2 years before Julia. They dated for 6 months. 6 beautiful months filled with real conversations, real laughter, real connection. But they ended things peacefully when they realized they wanted different lives. Beatrice dreamed of a quiet life, maybe teaching music at a small school, growing flowers in a little garden somewhere. Henry was chasing empires. 2 years after the breakup, Beatrice appeared at his door, 7 months pregnant with twins. She told him she had tried to reach him for months. Calls, texts, messages, but Henry had been traveling nonstop. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Miami, meeting investors, closing deals, signing contracts. He never saw her messages. He never picked up her calls. By the time she finally found him in person, she was exhausted, her feet swollen, her belly heavy. Henry was shocked, but he didn't hesitate, not even for a second. He took full responsibility. He set up a nursery on the 2nd floor of the mansion with handcrafted wooden furniture, soft blue and white decorations, and hired the best doctors in the state to monitor the pregnancy. But fate had other plans. Beatrice suffered a severe hemorrhage during delivery. The doctors tried everything, every procedure, every machine, every second of effort they could give. But it wasn't enough. She didn't make it. She left this world without ever holding her sons, without hearing their first cry, without seeing their tiny faces up close. It was one of the darkest days of Henry's life. Julia, who was already his fiancée at the time, told him she understood. She held his hand and said all the right things, that she would love those boys like her own, that they would never feel the absence of a mother because she would be that mother for them. She promised love. She promised dedication. She promised family. But promises are easy when the money is flowing. Now, with Henry supposedly unconscious, possibly dying, all those beautiful promises had evaporated like morning fog. And the real Julia was standing in the middle of that room, her mask completely gone. "Ma'am, please, they're just babies," Lucy said, her voice cracking as tears filled her eyes. "They didn't choose any of this. And Mr. Henry loves them more than anything in this world. If he could hear you right now, it would destroy him." "He's not going to hear anything, Lucy," Julia said flatly, walking to the window and staring outside at the perfectly maintained garden. The tall oak trees, the green lawn, the flower beds that Henry's gardener tended to every day. And even if he wakes up by some miracle, he'll be useless. Can't feed himself, can't bathe himself, can't do anything. So why would I stay here, changing diapers and losing my mind, when I could be living my life? The smartest thing to do is put these kids in foster care or find someone who actually wants to adopt them. Problem solved. Everyone moves on. Lucy stared at her in disbelief. Her arms tightened around the twins. Tears rolled down her cheeks and dripped onto her blue uniform. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This woman, who wore Henry's ring, who slept in his bed, who called herself the future mother of his children, was talking about throwing them away like they were nothing. "You can't do that, ma'am. You don't have that right," Lucy said, her voice shaking but firm. "These children have a father. He's right here. He's going to get better and take care of them." Julia spun around, her face twisted with fury. She marched toward Lucy with sharp, heavy steps and pointed her finger directly at Lucy's face, close enough to make her flinch. Henry, lying in the bed, had to use every ounce of willpower to stay still. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to get up and stop this. But he knew he had to wait. He needed to see exactly how far Julia would go. He needed proof, undeniable, absolute proof of who she really was. "You're just a housekeeper, Lucy," Julia hissed, her voice cold as ice. "You have zero authority to tell me what I can or can't do with these kids. And if you keep up this attitude, you're going to lose your job today, right now." You'll go back to that tiny apartment in the bad part of town, and you won't be able to afford your mother's heart medication or your brother's school supplies. Is that what you want? You want your family to suffer because of two babies you barely know. The words hit Lucy like a punch to the stomach. She lowered her head, feeling the weight of the threat press down on her chest. She needed this job. Her mother's life literally depended on it. But at the same time, she couldn't imagine walking away from these two helpless babies and leaving them in the hands of someone this heartless. She looked down at the twins in her arms. They were sleeping peacefully, their tiny faces soft and angelic, their small chests rising and falling in rhythm. And in that moment, something inside Lucy shifted. A quiet, unshakable decision was made. No matter what it cost her, she would not abandon these children. "I understand, ma'am," Lucy whispered, but inside her mind was already made up. Julia seemed satisfied. She stepped back, adjusted her hair, perfectly styled from the most expensive salon in town, and glanced at the luxury watch on her wrist. Then she let out an irritated sigh, as if this whole conversation had been a waste of her precious time. "I need to leave. I have a dinner downtown with important people. People who can actually help me in the future," Julia said, grabbing her designer handbag from the dark wood dresser. "You stay here and watch him, but keep those kids quiet. If I come back and hear even one cry, I'm taking serious action. And you know I don't make empty threats, Lucy. I always follow through." Lucy just nodded silently. She watched Julia walk out of the bedroom, her high heels clicking against the polished hardwood floor, echoing down the long hallway of the mansion. When the door shut with a sharp click, Lucy exhaled and felt her legs almost give out beneath her. She walked slowly toward the beige armchair near the window, sat down carefully, and adjusted the babies in her arms. Then she looked over at Henry, bandaged, still silent, and felt a deep wave of sadness wash over her. "Mr. Henry, you need to wake up soon," Lucy whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Your boys need you now more than ever. I'm going to take care of them until you can. I promise with all my heart. Nothing bad is going to happen to them while I'm here. But please, get better soon. Because that woman is not who you think she is. She doesn't love you. She only loves your money. And she doesn't love these innocent babies who didn't ask to be born into this situation." Henry felt a lump form in his throat. Those words, raw, honest, full of genuine pain, hit him harder than anything Julia had said. He realized in that moment that Lucy was real. She cared about his sons without expecting anything in return. No agenda, no calculation, no hidden motive. Just pure, selfless love. He continued to lie still, but inside his mind, decisions were already forming. Decisions that would change everything. Lucy began to hum softly, a lullaby her mother used to sing to her when she was a little girl afraid of thunderstorms. The melody was simple but filled with tenderness. The babies settled deeper into sleep, their breathing slow and peaceful. She looked at their tiny faces and felt a wave of love that she couldn't explain. A love that felt almost maternal, even though she had never had children of her own. Hours passed slowly. The afternoon faded into evening, and the warm sunlight was replaced by the soft golden glow of the bedside lamp. Lucy stayed in the armchair the entire time, rocking the babies gently, humming quietly, checking on Henry every few minutes for any sign of change. Then, around 8 o'clock, the bedroom door creaked open. Julia stormed in with heavy steps. Her face was tight with irritation, lips pressed into a thin line. She threw her handbag onto the dresser with a loud thud and turned to Lucy, who quickly stood up from the armchair, clutching the twins protectively. "They're still here?" Julia asked, her voice dripping with acid as she stared at the babies with visible disgust. "Didn't I tell you to get them out of here? Do I need to repeat myself 2 or 3 times for you to understand a simple order?" "Ma'am, they've been sleeping the whole time. They didn't make a single sound, just like you asked," Lucy replied quickly, her voice low and respectful, but trembling with the fear of losing everything. Julia walked to the window and crossed her arms tightly. She stood in silence for a long moment, her face illuminated by the lamplight. Hard, calculating, cold. Then she turned and locked her eyes directly onto Lucy's. Lucy, I need you to understand something once and for all. These children are not part of my future. Not in any way. And if Henry doesn't recover from this, which is looking more and more unlikely every hour, they become a massive problem that I have absolutely no intention of dealing with. So you have two very simple options, Julia continued, her voice sharp and final. Either you take them and raise them yourself, on your own, without a single extra dollar from me, or I take the necessary steps to remove them from my life permanently. And when I say steps, I mean it, Lucy. This is not a joke. This is not a bluff. Lucy felt the blood drain from her face. She pressed the babies tighter against her chest, her heart pounding like a drum. Those words were a direct threat, no softening, no sugarcoating. And she knew Julia meant every syllable. She looked at the sleeping twins and then at Henry on the bed, silently begging him to open his eyes and end this nightmare. Ma'am, I don't understand how you can talk like this about innocent children. Children of the man you say you love, the man you were going to marry in a few months, Lucy said, her voice shaking. But there was a growing fire in her words, a courage born from love. How can you be this cold? They're just babies. They need love and protection, not rejection. Julia stepped closer, her eyes blazing with barely contained rage. And Henry, lying in the bed, watched everything through his half-closed eyelids. Every muscle tense, ready to intervene if needed. But he knew he had to let this play out until the very end. You want the complete truth, Lucy? Julia said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. I never loved Henry. Not really. I loved his money. I loved the status he gave me. I loved the lifestyle, the imported cars, the international trips, the designer clothes, the five-star restaurants, the VIP parties. And these children, they're just an obstacle standing between me and everything he built. So yes, I'm cold. Yes, I'm calculating. And I will do whatever it takes to get what's mine. Henry felt a wave of rage like he had never experienced before. But he stayed perfectly still, absorbing every word of that devastating confession. Lucy was pale, trembling, clutching the babies as if shielding them from a storm. You're a terrible person. You have no heart, no soul, Lucy said, her voice quivering but filled with genuine fury. And I will do everything in my power to keep these children safe from you, even if it costs me everything I have. My job, my stability, everything. I will not let you hurt these innocent babies. Julia smiled cruelly, a smile that never reached her eyes. You can't do anything, Lucy. You're just a poor housekeeper with no power and no connections in this city. And if you try to stop me or tell anyone what you heard today, I will destroy you and your entire family. I'll make sure you never work again. Not in this town, not anywhere nearby. I'll ruin your mother's life, your brother's future. Everything. Do you understand me clearly? Or do I need to spell it out? Lucy stumbled back a step, terrified. But she kept the babies secure in her arms. And that was the moment Henry couldn't take it anymore. He opened his eyes fully and began to sit up in the bed. Slowly, deliberately, he reached up and started removing the bandages from his head, pulling them away strip by strip. Julia and Lucy both turned to look at him at the exact same time. Julia's expression transformed instantly, from threatening to pure shock. Her mouth fell open. Her eyes went wide as if she were watching a ghost rise from a grave. Lucy froze too, confused, not understanding what was happening. Was he getting better? Was this a miracle? Henry sat up fully, peeled the last of the wrappings from his chest, and looked directly at Julia. His face carried a mix of deep disappointment and quiet, controlled anger. Henry, you're awake. Oh, thank God. I was so worried about you, Julia said immediately, her voice shifting to something sweet and concerned. She rushed toward the bed with quick steps. How are you feeling, honey? Do you need anything? Should I call the doctor? You don't need to pretend anymore, Julia, Henry said, his voice steady despite the ache in his ribs. I heard everything, every single word, every threat you made to Lucy, every confession about never loving me, about only wanting my money, about wanting to throw my sons away like they're garbage. I've been listening since this afternoon. From the very beginning. Julia's face went white. Every drop of color drained from her cheeks. She stopped mid-step, her fake concern dissolving into raw panic. She looked at Lucy as if the housekeeper had somehow set a trap, but Lucy was just as stunned. Henry, I can explain everything. You're taking it out of context, Julia stammered, reaching her hands toward him. I was stressed, exhausted. I didn't mean any of those horrible things. I love you, you know that, and I love those children too. I was just tired. I haven't slept in days worrying about you. Don't, Henry said firmly, standing up from the bed despite the dizziness. Don't lie to me now. Not after everything I just heard with my own ears. You said word for word that you never loved me, that my sons are an obstacle, that you want to dump them in foster care. You threatened Lucy, a woman whose only crime was trying to protect two defenseless babies. So tell me, Julia, how am I supposed to believe a single word that comes out of your mouth right now? Julia dropped to her knees on the floor, sobbing dramatically, grabbing at his hands. But the tears looked exactly like everything else about her, manufactured, calculated, designed to manipulate. Lucy stood frozen, still holding the twins, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. She was only now realizing that Henry had faked the entire accident, that it had all been a test. Please, Henry, forgive me. I made a terrible mistake. We can start over. I'll change. I'll be better. I'll love those children like I promised. You don't need me, Julia. You need my money and my name. That's not love. That's a transaction, Henry said, pulling his hands free and stepping back. I staged this accident because I had growing doubts about you. For months, I noticed that you only cared about material things. You never asked how I was really doing. Never cared about my past, my fears, my story. And now I have my answer loud and clear. You showed exactly who you are when you thought I had nothing left to offer you. Julia stood up slowly from the floor, wiping her tears. And just like that, in a matter of seconds, her entire demeanor changed. The mask of the loving, remorseful woman shattered completely, and the cold, calculating person she had always been underneath stared right back at him. You're going to regret this, Henry. I could have been the best thing that ever happened to you. But you chose two babies from a failed relationship with a woman who isn't even alive anymore. Julia spat, venom dripping from every word. And this ridiculous housekeeper who thinks she's better than me just because she pretends to care about babies that are going to be nothing but a burden for the rest of your life. You deserve each other. Get out of my house, Julia. Right now, Henry said, his voice filled with authority. And leave the engagement ring on the dresser before you walk out that door. You don't deserve to wear it. Julia yanked the ring off her finger and slammed it onto the dresser. She grabbed her bag, marched to the door, and turned one last time, her eyes burning with hatred. I'm going to tell everyone in this city what you did. That you're a cruel man who faked an accident to test me like some kind of lab experiment. No one will ever want to be with you again. Go ahead, Henry said calmly. But remember, I have a witness to everything you said today. And if you try to spread lies about me, I'll take you to court for defamation. And I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are. A woman who threatened helpless newborns and an honest woman just trying to do the right thing. Julia stormed out, slamming the door so hard the sound echoed through the entire mansion. The babies stirred in Lucy's arms. Then silence, thick, heavy silence. Henry sat back down on the edge of the bed. The emotional weight of everything that had just happened pressed down on him. He had loved that woman, or at least he thought he had. But now he understood clearly. He had fallen in love with an illusion. A carefully built mask that hid the real person underneath. He looked up at Lucy, who was still standing in the same spot, holding his sons with gentle, protective care. Lucy, I owe you a huge apology, he said quietly. I'm sorry for putting you through all of that. For letting her threaten you the way she did. Henry continued, his eyes filled with genuine gratitude. But I needed to know the truth, who she really was. And you were incredible today. The way you stood up for my boys, without any obligation, without anything to gain. That tells me everything I need to know about the kind of person you are. I only did what any decent person would do, Mr. Henry. These children are innocent and they deserve to be protected, Lucy said, her voice soft and emotional. And I'm so relieved that you're okay. I was so scared. I prayed every day for you to get better. I asked God for a miracle. Henry stood and walked over to her slowly. He looked down at his sleeping sons. So small, so perfect, so fragile, and gently touched one baby's cheek with his fingertip. A wave of fatherly love surged through him. He had almost made the worst mistake of his life, handing his children's future to someone who despised them. Lucy, I have a proposal for you, he said, looking her in the eyes. I hired you as a housekeeper, but I can see that you love my boys in a way that's rare and real. Would you consider becoming their full-time nanny? I'll triple your salary, give you full health benefits for your entire family, and I'll make sure your mother gets the best cardiac care available. Your brothers can keep studying without any financial worries. I'll cover everything. Lucy's eyes went wide. She had never imagined anything like this. She looked at the babies and felt her heart tighten with pure emotion. Mr. Henry, I don't know what to say. It would be the greatest honor of my life to care for these boys, she said, tears forming in her eyes. I accept with all my heart. I'll love them like they're my own. And bring your mother to live here, Henry added with a tired but genuine smile. There's plenty of room upstairs. She'll have the best doctors in the state. And your brothers, I'll put them in one of the best private schools in Connecticut. Lucy broke down crying, not from sadness, but from overwhelming gratitude. She had walked into this house 2 months ago hoping for nothing more than an honest paycheck. Now she was being offered something that would change her family's life forever. In the days that followed, everything shifted. Julia tried to spread ugly rumors about Henry throughout the city. But the truth has a way of surfacing. People who had known Julia for years began sharing their own stories. How she had tried to get close to other wealthy men before Henry. How she had always been known for being manipulative and self-serving. Slowly, her reputation unraveled, destroyed not by Henry, but by her own history. Meanwhile, Henry's home came alive. Lucy moved her mother and brothers into the mansion. The house that once felt cold and quiet was now filled with warmth, laughter, and the sound of babies cooing. Lucy was everything those boys needed: patient, loving, devoted. She woke up before dawn when they cried, changed diapers without complaint, sang lullabies with the sweetest voice, and played with them during the day as if every moment was a gift. Henry, too, stepped up like never before. He cut back on business travel, learned to make bottles, change diapers, and make silly faces just to hear his sons laugh. For the first time in his life, he realized that being a present father was more fulfilling than any deal he had ever closed. Over the months, Henry and Lucy developed a deep, honest friendship built on mutual respect and shared values. They talked about everything: the babies, life, dreams, fears. And Henry began to notice something remarkable about Lucy. She didn't care about money or status. She valued kindness, honesty, family, everything Julia never had. Then one evening, nearly a year after that unforgettable day, Henry invited Lucy for a walk in the garden after the twins had fallen asleep. They strolled in comfortable silence under the stars, listening to crickets, breathing in the scent of flowers. Henry stopped near the stone fountain in the center of the garden and turned to her. "Lucy, I need to tell you something I've been carrying in my heart for a long time," he said softly. "This past year has been the best year of my life. Not because of business or money, but because of the family we've built in this house. You, your mother, your brothers, my boys. You all brought something into my life that was missing for years. Real love. And somewhere along the way I fell in love with you. With who you are. With your heart." Lucy's breath caught. She had developed deep feelings for him too, but always believed it was impossible. That they were from different worlds. That a man like him would never look at someone like her that way. "Henry, I feel the same way," she whispered, tears of joy running down her face. "But I always thought I wasn't enough, that I was just a housekeeper. That someone like you would never. You're not just anything, Lucy. You're the most real, Most incredible person I've ever known, Henry said, holding her hands gently. And please, stop calling me Mr. Henry. Just Henry. I want us to be equals, partners, in everything. They married 6 months later in a simple, beautiful ceremony in the mansion garden. The twins, now toddling and giggling, wore matching white outfits. Lucy's mother wept with joy. Her brothers stood proudly as ushers. It was perfect. Years later, with the twins now teenagers, Henry sat in that same bedroom where it all began. Lucy walked in quietly, set down 2 cups of tea, and rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't faked that accident?" she asked softly. "Every day," Henry replied, kissing the top of her head. "I would have married the wrong person, and the best thing that ever happened to me, you, was standing right in front of me the whole time. Because real love isn't measured by pretty words or expensive rings. It's measured by what people do when they think no one is watching, in the hardest, most vulnerable moments of life." If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it today.